In 2026, the survival thriller Send Help arrived with a simple title but a powerful promise. From the very first announcement, audiences knew they were about to experience a story about desperation, isolation, and the raw instinct to stay alive. The film brings viewers into a tense and emotional journey where survival is not just physical, but deeply psychological. It is not just about being stranded. It is about what happens to the human mind when hope begins to fade. Send Help immediately sets a serious tone. The title itself feels like a final message typed on a dying phone battery. It sounds urgent. It sounds personal. And it tells us that someone, somewhere, is in real danger. That urgency becomes the emotional engine of the film. From the beginning, the story pulls the audience into a situation that feels frighteningly real. There are no superheroes here. There are no magical escapes. There are only ordinary people placed in an extraordinary crisis. The movie explores what happens when modern comfort disappears in an instant. In today's world, we are always connected. We rely on phones, satellites, and constant communication. But what happens when all of that is gone? Send Help takes that fear and turns it into a gripping survival story. The film strips away technology, safety, and control. What remains is pure human instinct. One of the strongest elements introduced early in the film is isolation. The characters are cut off from the world they know. There is no easy way out. No simple rescue plan. The setting itself becomes a silent enemy. Nature is unpredictable and unforgiving. The environment does not care about human fear. This creates an atmosphere that feels tense from the very start. Every sound matters. Every decision carries weight. But Send Help is not only about survival in a physical sense. It is also about emotional survival. When people are pushed to their limits, their true selves are revealed. Fear can destroy trust. Hunger can create conflict. And the pressure of uncertainty can break even the strongest personalities. The film carefully builds this emotional tension, allowing the audience to feel every moment of doubt and every spark of hope. Another important aspect introduced in the opening of the film is the idea of responsibility. Who is to blame for what happened? Could the disaster have been avoided? These questions linger in the background, adding another layer to the story. Survival becomes more complicated when guilt and regret enter the picture. The characters are not just fighting the environment. They are also fighting their own past decisions. Visually and emotionally, the introduction of Send Help promises a grounded and realistic experience. The tone is serious but not exaggerated. The fear feels believable. The danger feels possible. This realism is what makes the film so powerful. Viewers can imagine themselves in the same situation. They can feel the weight of uncertainty and the terrifying silence that comes with being truly alone. As the story begins to unfold, the audience understands that this will not be a simple rescue adventure. It will be a test of endurance. It will challenge not only the characters on screen but also the viewers watching from their seats. The film asks an uncomfortable question. If you were trapped with limited resources and fading hope, who would you become? Would you stay calm and rational? Or would fear take control? In the end, the introduction of Send Help sets the stage for a gripping survival drama that goes beyond action and suspense. It prepares us for a story about resilience, human weakness, trust, betrayal, and the unstoppable will to live. The film invites the audience to witness not just a fight against nature, but a fight within the human soul itself. This is only the beginning of a journey where every choice matters, every second counts, and one desperate message could mean the difference between life and death. Send Help is a 2026 survival thriller that blends intense drama with psychological tension. The film was directed by Sam Raimi, a filmmaker widely known for combining suspense, character emotion, and visual creativity. With this project, he returns to grounded storytelling, focusing on human struggle rather than fantasy elements. The movie was produced by a collaboration between a major Hollywood studio and Raimi's longtime production partners, ensuring both strong financial backing and creative freedom. The result is a tightly controlled survival story that feels both intimate and cinematic at the same time. The film stars Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien in the leading roles. Their casting brought immediate attention to the project because both actors are known for emotional depth and strong screen presence. Supporting roles are played by a small but carefully selected cast, as the story focuses mainly on a limited number of characters. This smaller cast size helps the audience connect more closely with the main characters and makes every interaction feel important. Since much of the movie takes place in isolation, performance strength was a key factor in the film's production planning. Send Help falls into the survival thriller genre, but it also includes elements of psychological drama and character study. The official runtime of the movie is approximately 1 hour and 55 minutes. This length allows enough time to build tension slowly while still keeping the pacing tight. The film is rated PG-13, mainly due to intense sequences, strong thematic material, and survival-related danger. While there are frightening moments, the movie avoids excessive violence, choosing instead to focus on emotional intensity and realistic peril. The story is set in a remote island location in the South Pacific. According to production notes, much of the movie was filmed on location to create authenticity. Real coastal landscapes, dense jungle areas, and rocky shorelines were used to enhance realism. Some additional scenes were shot in controlled studio environments to safely manage complex sequences. The combination of practical outdoor filming and studio work allowed the filmmakers to maintain both visual beauty and safety standards during production. The film's screenplay was written by Mark Swift and Damian Shannon. The writers are known for building tension through character conflict and survival stakes. In Send Help, they focus heavily on dialogue that reveals personality under stress. Rather than relying only on physical action, the screenplay explores trust, fear, and moral decisions. This writing style supports the psychological side of the film and helps elevate it beyond a simple survival adventure. The musical score was composed by Bear McCreary, who is recognized for creating emotional and atmospheric soundtracks. For this film, he used a mix of orchestral themes and minimal environmental sounds to highlight isolation. The music plays a subtle but powerful role in shaping mood. Silence is also used strategically throughout the film, allowing natural sounds like wind, waves, and distant echoes to build tension. Production began in early 2025 and lasted several months. The filmmakers faced real challenges due to the natural locations, including unpredictable weather and difficult terrain. However, these challenges contributed to the film's realistic appearance. The crew reportedly worked closely with survival consultants to ensure that the characters' actions felt believable. Small details, such as how food is gathered or how shelter is built, were carefully researched. This attention to realism helps the audience fully believe the situation. When Send Help was officially announced, it generated strong anticipation because of its director and cast. Marketing focused on mystery and tension rather than revealing major plot points. Early trailers emphasized isolation, emotional strain, and the desperate message that gives the film its title. By the time of its theatrical release in 2026, the film had built solid public interest among thriller fans. Overall, Send Help stands as a character-driven survival thriller backed by experienced filmmakers, strong performances, and a commitment to realism. Its technical team, cast selection, and production choices all reflect a focused effort to create a tense and emotionally engaging cinematic experience. Linda Little had spent 15 years building a career out of patience. At Preston Global, she was known as dependable, diligent, and invisible. She wasn't charismatic like the sales directors or bold like the executives who dominated board meetings. She was the one who stayed late to polish strategies, correct financial projections, and quietly fix the mistakes of men who later took credit for her work. Her former boss had always assured her that her time would come. He promised that once his son Bradley Preston stepped into the CEO role, Linda would finally receive the promotion she had earned, Senior Strategy Director. She believed him. She believed that loyalty and competence would eventually be rewarded. But when Bradley officially became CEO, the announcement shocked everyone, especially Linda. Instead of calling her name, Bradley promoted Donovan Burke, a recent hire who just so happened to be his old fraternity brother. Donovan was charming, loud, and effortlessly confident, the kind of man who shook hands too firmly and laughed too hard at his own jokes. The board applauded politely, but Linda felt something collapse inside her. Years of dedication evaporated in a single moment. Worse still, Bradley later hinted that she might be better suited for a lateral transfer, a polite corporate term for a dead-end role, citing her lack of executive presence and charisma. To him, she was competent but uninspiring, a background player in a game dominated by bold personalities. For the first time in her career, Linda didn't stay silent. She confronted Bradley in his office, her voice trembling at first but gaining strength as she spoke. She reminded him of the profits she had generated, the crises she had solved, the strategies that bore her fingerprints. Bradley expected her to shrink, but instead he saw something unfamiliar: defiance. Rather than dismissing her outright, he surprised her with an invitation. He was heading to Bangkok with Donovan and 2 other executives to finalize a high-stakes merger. If she wanted to prove herself, she could come along. It wasn't the promotion she deserved, but it was an opportunity. Linda accepted, determined to show Bradley that she was more than a quiet strategist. The flight to Thailand began uneventfully, but Donovan made sure Linda remained the target of subtle mockery. Midway through the flight, he connected his tablet to the cabin screen system and played a video he had discovered online. It was Linda's old audition tape for the reality show Survivor, something she had recorded years ago during a period when she felt stuck and desperate for change. In the video, she enthusiastically demonstrated survival skills, explaining how she could build shelters and forage for food. The tape was awkward and overly earnest, filled with forced confidence and nervous smiles. The executives erupted in laughter. Donovan exaggerated his amusement, replaying her lines as if they were punchlines. Linda felt humiliated but forced herself to endure it, staring forward and refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Then the plane hit severe turbulence. What began as light shaking quickly escalated into violent convulsions. Lightning illuminated the cabin windows as the aircraft pushed through a brutal storm. An engine failed with a deafening roar, and panic spread among the passengers. Oxygen masks dropped, alarms blared, and the plane began to lose altitude rapidly. Suddenly, the cabin experienced explosive decompression as a section of the fuselage tore open. The wind screamed through the aircraft, pulling loose objects and screaming passengers toward the breach. In the chaos, Donovan's composure shattered. Driven by raw survival instinct, he lunged toward Linda, attempting to unbuckle her and take her seat, believing it offered a better chance of survival. He wrapped his hands around her throat in desperation. Linda reacted without thinking. She grabbed a metal fork from her tray and stabbed him in self-defense. Donovan recoiled just as a violent gust sucked him and several others out of the ruptured cabin. Strapped in tightly, Linda and Bradley remained in their seats as the plane spiraled downward. Within moments, it crashed into the sea with catastrophic force. The impact shattered the aircraft and flooded the cabin with water. Linda struggled against the rushing current, freeing herself just before losing consciousness. She awoke on a remote beach the next morning, disoriented and sunburned. The sea was calm, deceptively peaceful, as if the night's horror had never happened. Wreckage floated offshore, but there were no signs of other survivors. Staggering along the shoreline, she eventually found Bradley lying unconscious but alive, his legs severely injured. Relief washed over her, not because she cared deeply for him, but because survival felt less terrifying with another human presence. Linda's Survivor audition tape suddenly felt less ridiculous. Drawing from the skills she once demonstrated for a casting director's amusement, she built a makeshift shelter from debris and palm leaves, gathered fresh water, and scavenged for edible plants. Bradley, immobilized by pain, was forced to depend on her completely. Yet even in their new reality, he continued to treat her like an assistant rather than a partner. He issued instructions, criticized her methods, and assumed authority as if the island were another boardroom. After days of condescension, Linda made a decision. She left him alone. For 2 days, she survived independently on the far side of the beach, testing whether she truly needed him at all. When she returned, she found Bradley dehydrated and near collapse. She gave him water and helped him recover, silently reinforcing the shift in power between them. Though Bradley attempted to reassert control by building his own camp, His efforts failed miserably. His pride eroded as hunger and weakness humbled him. Eventually, he conceded leadership to Linda. She proved resourceful and capable, fishing with handmade spears and even managing to kill a wild boar. For the first time in her life, she felt competent in a way no boardroom had ever allowed. The island stripped away office politics and left only survival, and in that arena, Linda was extraordinary. One afternoon, while foraging along the far side of the island, she spotted a distant boat on the horizon. It was close enough that she could have signaled for help. Instead, she froze, watching it pass by without raising a single cry. Something inside her hesitated. Rescue meant returning to a world where she was overlooked and undervalued. Here she was powerful. Here she mattered. And as the boat disappeared, Linda made no effort to bring it back. Days on the island turned into weeks, and something inside Linda began to change. At first, survival had been about necessity, finding water, building shelter, keeping Bradley alive despite his injured leg and persistent arrogance. But as time passed, survival became something else. It became clarity. On the island there were no boardrooms, no whispered office politics, no dismissive glances from men who underestimated her. There were only results. Either you adapted or you suffered. And Linda adapted beautifully. Bradley's leg slowly improved, but not enough for him to reclaim dominance. He still relied on Linda for food, fire, and direction. At first, he maintained the tone of a superior delegating tasks to a subordinate. He would suggest improvements to her shelter layout, critique her hunting methods, and speak as though he were overseeing a project rather than clinging to life. Linda responded with polite silence, but the silence carried weight now. It was no longer submission, it was control. She decided when he ate. She decided when they moved. She decided what information he received. The balance of power had shifted so gradually that Bradley didn't recognize it until he realized he was asking permission instead of giving orders. Linda became stronger physically and emotionally. She fished with precision, crafted tools from debris, and navigated the island with confidence. When she successfully killed a wild boar using a sharpened spear, something primal awakened within her. She dragged the carcass back to camp alone, blood streaking her arms, her face calm and focused. Bradley stared at her differently after that. There was admiration in his eyes, but also unease. The meek strategist he had once dismissed was gone. In her place stood someone capable, resourceful, and unsettlingly self-assured. At night they shared fermented fruit wine Linda had managed to brew. The alcohol softened Bradley's tone and loosened Linda's guarded thoughts. One evening, under a sky heavy with stars, she confessed a secret she had never told anyone at work. She spoke of her marriage, of a husband who had belittled and abused her emotionally and physically. She described years of shrinking herself to survive his anger. Then she revealed the darkest truth. One night, after enduring another outburst, she allowed him to drive drunk despite knowing he was in no condition to do so. She had watched him stumble to the car and had done nothing. The crash that killed him was ruled an accident. She inherited his life insurance and quietly rebuilt herself. As she spoke, her voice carried no tears, only calm acceptance. Bradley listened, visibly moved. For the first time, he saw not a subordinate, but a survivor forged by trauma. The following evening, Bradley offered to cook dinner as repayment for her honesty. He gathered berries he claimed were edible and prepared a stew. Linda, exhausted from a day of foraging, ate without suspicion. Within hours she felt dizzy, nauseated, her muscles trembling. Bradley stood over her as realization dawned. He had poisoned her. He confessed quickly, his composure cracking. He couldn't return to civilization as the CEO who survived by relying on the woman he had publicly humiliated. The story would destroy him. Investors would question him. The board would laugh behind closed doors. It was easier, he explained coldly, if she didn't survive. As Linda weakened, Bradley dragged together an improvised raft from driftwood and debris. He left her on the sand, assuming the poison would finish its work. But Bradley had miscalculated. His knowledge of the berries was flawed, and the dosage insufficient. Linda drifted in and out of consciousness but did not die. Hours later, a storm surged across the shoreline, destroying Bradley's fragile raft and pulling him into the violent surf. Despite her condition, Linda crawled toward the water and managed to drag him back before he drowned. She collapsed beside him, half-conscious, the irony almost laughable. The man who tried to kill her owed his life to her again. When she recovered, Linda's demeanor had hardened. The softness from her confession was gone. She no longer pretended to view Bradley as anything other than a liability. Using knowledge gained from her abandoned survivor ambitions, she extracted toxin from a blue-ringed octopus she had captured earlier. The venom, carefully administered in controlled amounts, paralyzed Bradley temporarily without killing him. As he lay immobilized, panic flooding his eyes, Linda staged a terrifying performance. With a sharpened shell pressed against him, she pretended to castrate him, explaining in chilling calm that she had nothing left in the corporate world. Her career was effectively over. No promotion awaited her. No respect. On the island, she was powerful. She was necessary. She was seen. Bradley's resistance broke. He stopped plotting escape and accepted his diminished role. He addressed her with gentler tones, followed instructions without protest, and abandoned the illusion of authority. For a time, an uneasy peace settled between them. Linda even resumed calling him "sweetie," her voice playful but layered with irony. She taught him to fish, to forage properly, to survive without ego. He complied, humbled by fear and dependence. One afternoon, while collecting fruit near the rocky cliffs on the island's far side, Linda saw a boat approaching. Her heart raced. Unlike the distant vessel she had once ignored, this one was heading directly toward shore. She rushed back to camp, breathless, only to freeze when she saw who stepped off the boat. It was Zuri, Bradley's fiancée, elegant, determined, accompanied by a hired local guide. After search and rescue efforts had been called off, she had funded her own expedition. Linda felt the ground shift beneath her. Rescue meant the end of everything she had built here. The island had transformed her into something formidable. Returning meant facing investigations, corporate humiliation, and a world where she was once again underestimated. Smiling tightly, she led Zuri and the guide toward the cliffs, claiming she had seen smoke signals from that vantage point. The rocks were slick and treacherous. Zuri slipped suddenly, clinging to the edge as the guide tried desperately to pull her up. They screamed for help. Linda stood frozen, staring down at them. For a long moment, she did nothing. And then she stepped back. Linda walked back to camp slowly after leaving Zuri and the guide at the cliffs. The screams had echoed for several minutes before fading into the crash of waves below. She told herself it had happened too quickly, that the rocks were too unstable, that she would have fallen too if she had tried to help. But deep down she knew the truth. She had made a choice. Rescue meant surrendering the power she had discovered within herself. Rescue meant returning to a world that diminished her. On the island, she was not overlooked or dismissed. She was essential. She was extraordinary. And she was not ready to give that up. When Bradley returned from gathering firewood and saw Linda's expression, he sensed something was wrong. She told him Zuri had arrived with a guide, that there had been an accident near the cliffs. Bradley's face drained of color as he ran toward the shoreline, calling Zuri's name into the wind. Hours later, he found her body washed up along the beach, lifeless and broken by the fall. The guide was nowhere to be seen, presumably taken by the sea. Bradley collapsed beside Zuri's body, grief twisting into suspicion as he replayed Linda's explanation in his mind. When he confronted her, Linda did not deny being there. She admitted Zuri had slipped but insisted it was an accident. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. Bradley searched her face for guilt and found something worse: detachment. Rage erupted inside him. He lunged at her, years of entitlement and recent humiliation boiling over into violence. What followed was brutal and desperate. They fought like animals, rolling across sand and stone. Bradley managed to partially gouge her eye, leaving blood streaming down her face, but Linda did not retreat. She grabbed a sharpened piece of wreckage and stabbed him in the side. He stumbled backward, clutching the wound, then fled into the jungle in panic. Linda followed at a measured pace, tracking the drops of blood along the forest floor. She knew the island better than he did. She had mapped its edges and memorized its terrain. Bradley, weakened and disoriented, eventually stumbled onto something he had never seen before, a luxurious beach house hidden among palm trees on the opposite shore. Solar panels glinted on the roof. A small dock extended into clear water. Supplies were visible through glass windows. It was a private retreat, likely owned by a wealthy mainland family who visited seasonally. Bradley stared at it in disbelief. Salvation had been here all along. Linda stepped out from the trees behind him. She admitted she had discovered the house weeks earlier but had kept it secret. The island had never truly been a prison. It had been a choice. Bradley realized then that every hardship he endured had been filtered through her decisions. Every near rescue, every scarcity, every fear had been curated. Linda calmly explained that Zuri's death had not been entirely accidental. When the guide struggled to hold her, Linda had stepped forward, but not to help. She had pried his fingers loose. The shock in Bradley's eyes seemed to satisfy her. She raised a shotgun taken from the beach house and aimed it steadily at him. Bradley dropped to his knees, pleading through tears. He claimed he understood her now, that he admired her strength, that he even loved her. He said they could stay on the island together forever, free from corporate cruelty and outside judgment. He spoke desperately, trying to find words that would soften her. For a brief moment, Linda appeared to consider it. Then Bradley lunged forward, grabbing for the shotgun in a final act of survival instinct. The weapon clicked uselessly. It was not loaded. Linda had anticipated the move. With calculated precision, she struck him across the face with the butt of the gun, knocking him to the ground. The fight that followed was shorter and quieter than the first. Bradley was weakened from blood loss and exhaustion. Linda retrieved a golf club from inside the beach house, its polished metal absurdly pristine against the chaos around them. Bradley tried to crawl away, his earlier arrogance reduced to raw fear. Linda stood over him, breathing steadily, and brought the club down. Twice. Again and again until he stopped moving. The only sound afterward was the ocean rolling against the shore. Months passed. Linda used the beach house supplies to survive comfortably while she planned her return. When a seasonal maintenance crew eventually arrived by boat, she emerged as the lone survivor of a tragic plane crash. Her story was carefully constructed. She described bravery, perseverance, and the heartbreak of losing the only other survivor, Bradley, to infection after weeks of struggling to save him. Authorities found no evidence contradicting her account. The ocean had erased the rest. 1 year later, Linda Little was no longer invisible. She had transformed her survival story into a best-selling memoir and a lucrative self-help empire centered on resilience and empowerment. She appeared on talk shows, magazine covers, and motivational stages, recounting how she overcame corporate betrayal and unimaginable tragedy. The narrative was clean and inspiring. She was the underestimated strategist who discovered her strength in the face of disaster. No one questioned the details too closely. People preferred heroes to complicated truths. At a celebrity golf tournament promoting the upcoming film adaptation of her memoir, Linda stood before reporters with practiced composure. A faint scar traced near her damaged eye, now partially clouded but dramatically compelling on camera. When asked how it felt to be the sole survivor, she smiled with controlled humility and spoke about gratitude and growth. She thanked Bradley for believing in her during their final days, crafting his memory into something noble. After the interview, she climbed into her luxury car with her cockatiel, Sweetie, perched in a travel cage beside her. As she drove away from the manicured greens and flashing cameras, Blondie's "One Way or Another" played through the speakers. Linda sang along softly, her voice steady, her expression unreadable. The world saw a survivor who had conquered adversity. Only she knew the full truth of the island, of the choices made in silence, of the power she had tasted and refused to relinquish. And as the song echoed through the car, Linda smiled, knowing she had finally secured the promotion she always wanted, the promotion to absolute control. The plot structure of Send Help follows a classic 3-act format, but it adds emotional layers that make the journey feel deeper than a standard survival thriller. The story is carefully paced, allowing tension to rise naturally while keeping the audience fully invested in the characters. Each act serves a clear purpose, building momentum step by step until the final rescue. The first act introduces the main characters, Claire Monroe and Logan Pierce, and establishes their personalities before the disaster happens. We see Claire as confident and career-focused, traveling for business with little interest in connecting with others. Logan is introduced as a responsible pilot who values safety and routine. Their brief interactions before the crash are polite but distant. This early contrast is important because it sets up the emotional conflict that will unfold later. The plane crash happens near the end of the first act, acting as the major inciting incident that shifts the story from calm, normal life into immediate danger. The crash sequence is intense and chaotic, but it is not overly long. The film quickly moves from destruction to survival. This decision keeps the pacing tight and prevents the story from feeling repetitive. When Claire wakes up on the beach, confused and injured, the second act truly begins. This act focuses on survival, tension, and character conflict. In the early part of the second act, the narrative emphasizes physical challenges. Claire and Logan search the wreckage for supplies, build shelter, and attempt to create signals for rescue. These scenes are structured to show teamwork mixed with disagreement. The tension grows slowly rather than exploding all at once. Small arguments about leadership and decision-making build emotional pressure. The audience sees that survival is not only about food and water, but also about trust. Midway through the film, the story reaches its central turning point. The cargo ship appears in the distance, offering what seems like certain rescue. The attempt to signal the ship creates one of the most suspenseful moments in the movie. When the rain destroys the fire and the ship disappears, the emotional tone shifts. This moment serves as the midpoint reversal. It crushes their hope and forces them to accept that rescue may not come quickly. From this point forward, the narrative becomes more psychological. The second half of the second act explores emotional breakdown and growth. Claire struggles with panic and regret, while Logan deals with guilt over the crash. The island becomes harsher, symbolizing their inner battles. The storm that destroys their shelter marks another structural shift. It forces Claire to step into a leadership role when Logan becomes injured. This development keeps the story dynamic. Instead of repeating survival tasks, the film changes power dynamics between the characters. As the story moves into the third act, the discovery of the damaged emergency radio introduces new hope. This is the final major plot device that drives the climax. The tension rises again as Logan attempts to repair it using limited tools. Each failed attempt increases suspense. The audience feels the weight of time passing and the risk of giving up. The climax occurs when the radio finally sends a weak distress signal. However, the narrative does not immediately resolve. The delay between sending the signal and seeing the rescue helicopter creates one final emotional test. This pacing choice makes the rescue feel earned rather than convenient. When the helicopter finally appears, the relief feels genuine and powerful. The resolution, or falling action, is brief but meaningful. The story shows Claire reconnecting with her sister and Logan returning to flying. These scenes provide emotional closure without dragging the film longer than necessary. The narrative flow remains focused from beginning to end, never introducing unnecessary side plots or distractions. Overall, the structure of Send Help balances action and emotion carefully. The film uses clear turning points, escalating conflict, and meaningful character shifts to maintain engagement. The pacing allows tension to breathe while steadily moving forward. Each act builds naturally into the next, creating a survival story that feels both intense and emotionally satisfying. One of the strongest elements of Send Help is the transformation of its two main characters, Claire Monroe and Logan Pierce. The film is not only about surviving on a remote island. It is about how extreme circumstances reveal hidden fears, buried guilt, and unexpected strength. Both characters begin the story with emotional flaws, and the island forces them to confront those weaknesses. Their development feels natural because it grows directly from the challenges they face. Claire Monroe starts the film as a confident and highly successful marketing executive. She is intelligent, organized, and used to leading conversations. However, she is also emotionally distant. Early scenes show her ignoring personal phone calls and focusing only on work. She believes control equals safety. When the plane crashes, that sense of control disappears instantly. At first, Claire struggles to adapt. She becomes impatient and frustrated. She expects quick rescue and refuses to accept the seriousness of their isolation. During the early survival days, Claire depends heavily on Logan. She lacks practical outdoor skills and feels helpless. This vulnerability makes her defensive. She blames Logan for the crash, even though the storm was unavoidable. This blame is not truly about the accident. It reflects her deeper fear of losing control. The island strips away her professional identity. She is no longer the powerful executive. She is simply a survivor trying to stay alive. The turning point in Claire's character arc happens after the failed rescue attempt with the cargo ship. When the rain destroys the signal fire, she experiences complete emotional collapse. This breakdown is important because it marks the moment she stops pretending to be strong. She allows herself to feel fear and sadness. After this moment, Claire slowly begins to change. Instead of demanding answers, she starts learning survival skills. She watches Logan carefully and asks questions. When Logan injures his leg during the storm, Claire is forced into a leadership role. This is the second major step in her transformation. She gathers food, repairs shelter, and takes responsibility for their safety. Unlike her earlier controlling behavior, this new leadership comes from care rather than ego. She becomes more patient and thoughtful. By the final act, Claire is no longer reacting out of panic. She is making calm decisions. The experience softens her emotionally. When she returns home, she reconnects with her sister, showing that she has learned the value of vulnerability and connection. Logan Pierce begins the story as a steady and quiet professional pilot. He is experienced and cautious, but he carries hidden self-doubt. Early hints suggest he once made a risky decision during a previous flight that damaged his confidence. Although the crash was caused by severe weather, Logan still feels responsible. His guilt shapes his behavior on the island. He pushes himself physically, trying to make up for what happened. In the beginning, Logan appears stronger than Claire because he knows survival basics. However, emotionally he is fragile. He rarely speaks about his feelings. Instead, he focuses on tasks. The conflict with Claire forces him to defend himself, but he does so calmly. As days pass, he begins opening up about his fears and past mistakes. This honesty strengthens their connection. Logan's character arc shifts when he becomes injured. Suddenly, he cannot provide physical protection. This loss of ability challenges his identity. For a short time, he feels useless. But instead of giving up, he adapts. He uses his technical knowledge to repair the emergency radio. This shows that strength is not only physical. Logan learns to accept help rather than always offering it. By the end of the film, Logan regains confidence. Sending the distress signal is symbolic. It represents him overcoming guilt and believing in his skills again. When he returns to flying, he does so with renewed clarity and humility. Together, Claire and Logan experience parallel growth. Claire learns humility and emotional openness. Logan learns self-forgiveness and trust. Their arcs intersect, showing that survival changes people in unexpected ways. The emotional power of Send Help depends heavily on the performances of its two lead actors, Rachel McAdams as Claire Monroe and Dylan O'Brien as Logan Pierce. Because the film focuses on only a small number of characters and takes place mostly in isolation, there is no place for weak acting. Every expression, pause, and reaction matters. Both actors carry the film with performances that feel grounded, honest, and deeply human. Rachel McAdams delivers one of her most emotionally layered performances in this role. At the beginning of the film, she presents Claire as polished, confident, and slightly guarded. Her body language is controlled and professional. She speaks clearly and directly, often maintaining a sense of authority in her tone. These early choices help establish Claire as someone who is used to control. McAdams avoids making the character cold or unlikable. Instead, she shows subtle hints of stress and emotional distance, suggesting that Claire's confidence may be hiding deeper struggles. After the plane crash, McAdams shifts her performance carefully. She does not immediately turn Claire into a fearless survivor. Instead, she allows fear to show in small ways. Her breathing becomes uneven. Her voice cracks during arguments. Her eyes reflect confusion and disbelief. These small details make the situation feel real. The audience can see the mental pressure building inside her. The most powerful moment in McAdams' performance comes after the failed rescue attempt with the cargo ship. When the rain destroys the signal fire, her breakdown feels raw and unfiltered. She does not overact or exaggerate the emotion. Instead, she allows silence and tears to communicate the character's despair. It is in this moment that Claire feels completely human. From there, McAdams gradually introduces strength into the character. The transformation feels earned because it grows from vulnerability rather than sudden bravery. By the final act, her posture and tone show quiet determination instead of panic. Dylan O'Brien brings a different kind of energy to Logan Pierce. His performance is restrained and subtle. From the first scene, he portrays Logan as steady and thoughtful. His voice remains calm even during tense moments, which creates a strong contrast with Claire's emotional reactions. O'Brien uses silence effectively. Often, his character communicates through facial expressions rather than dialogue. This choice adds realism, as people under stress do not always speak dramatically. O'Brien also captures Logan's hidden guilt in a believable way. There are moments when his eyes linger on the wreckage or when he hesitates before answering Claire's accusations. These pauses suggest internal conflict. He does not play Logan as a perfect hero. Instead, he allows insecurity to surface in quiet moments. This makes the character relatable. When Logan becomes injured during the storm, O'Brien adjusts his physical performance. His movements become slower and more careful. His frustration shows through clenched hands and tightened facial muscles. However, he avoids turning the character into a victim. Even while injured, Logan remains mentally active. During the radio repair scenes, O'Brien expresses concentration and hope through focused eye contact and steady breathing. The performance highlights resilience without dramatic speeches. The chemistry between McAdams and O'Brien is one of the film's greatest strengths. Their arguments feel natural because both actors listen to each other during scenes. The emotional shifts in their relationship are believable. When trust slowly replaces blame, the change happens through small gestures, shared glances, and softened voices. Their connection grows in a way that feels organic rather than forced. Supporting performances are limited but effective. Brief flashbacks featuring Claire's sister add emotional context without distracting from the main story. These actors provide just enough depth to make the outside world feel real. Overall, the acting in Send Help feels authentic and carefully measured. Both leads balance vulnerability and strength, creating characters that feel alive rather than scripted. Their performances anchor the survival story in emotional truth, making every challenge more impactful for the audience. The direction of Send Help plays a crucial role in shaping the film's emotional intensity and grounded realism. Sam Raimi approaches the survival thriller with restraint and focus, choosing character depth over spectacle. While he is known for energetic camera work and bold visual choices in some of his past films, here he adopts a more controlled and intimate style. This shift in direction reflects a clear vision: to tell a human story about endurance, guilt, and transformation rather than simply delivering action-driven entertainment. From the opening scenes, Raimi establishes a sense of realism. The early moments on the plane are filmed in a natural, observational style. The camera does not rush or exaggerate tension. Instead, it allows conversations and small details to unfold calmly. This makes the sudden storm and crash feel more shocking. The disaster sequence is intense, but Raimi avoids turning it into a spectacle. The focus stays on the characters' reactions rather than flashy effects. This choice signals that the film's heart lies in emotional experience. Once the story moves to the island, Raimi's vision becomes even clearer. He treats the setting not just as a backdrop but as an active presence. Wide shots show the characters as small figures surrounded by vast ocean and dense jungle. These visual choices reinforce themes of isolation and vulnerability. At the same time, close-up shots capture sweat, fear, and exhaustion. The contrast between wide landscapes and intimate facial expressions highlights the struggle between human fragility and overwhelming nature. Raimi also demonstrates strong control over tone. The film never feels overly dramatic or exaggerated. Even during arguments between Claire and Logan, the direction keeps performances grounded. There are no loud background cues forcing emotion. Instead, silence is often used to increase tension. This restraint allows the audience to feel immersed in the character's reality. The fear and frustration feel authentic because they are not overstated. Another important aspect of Raimi's direction is pacing. He understands when to let scenes breathe and when to tighten momentum. For example, the cargo ship sequence builds slowly. The camera lingers on Claire's hopeful expression, then shifts to dark clouds forming in the sky. The rain does not arrive instantly. It creeps in, increasing anxiety. By controlling the rhythm of this scene, Raimi makes the disappointment more powerful. The audience feels hope rise and collapse in real time. Raimi's vision also emphasizes character transformation. He carefully frames moments of change. When Claire takes charge after Logan's injury, the camera angle subtly shifts. Earlier scenes often place her slightly behind Logan. Later, she is shown standing firmly in the center of the frame. These visual decisions quietly communicate growth without needing dialogue to explain it. The storm sequence that destroys their shelter is another example of focused direction. Raimi avoids chaotic editing and instead maintains clarity. The viewer can always understand where the characters are and what they are trying to protect. This clarity prevents confusion and keeps emotional stakes at the forefront. The audience worries not because of visual overload, but because they understand what is being lost. Perhaps most importantly, Raimi respects the simplicity of the story. He does not introduce unnecessary subplots or distractions. The narrative remains centered on two people and their shared struggle. This disciplined direction ensures that every scene serves a purpose. There is a consistent thematic focus on resilience and responsibility. In the final rescue sequence, Raimi again shows restraint. The helicopter's arrival is not overly triumphant. The camera stays close to Claire and Logan's faces, capturing exhaustion and disbelief. The emotional payoff feels earned because the direction never rushed their journey. Overall, Sam Raimi's vision for Send Help is clear and consistent. He creates a survival story that feels intimate, honest, and emotionally driven. His direction prioritizes character truth, environmental realism, and steady tension, resulting in a film that resonates beyond its basic premise. The cinematography of Send Help plays a vital role in shaping the emotional experience of the film. Every frame is designed to reflect isolation, vulnerability, and gradual transformation. The visual style supports the survival narrative by blending natural beauty with harsh realism. Instead of using flashy techniques, the film chooses a grounded and immersive approach that pulls the audience directly into the environment. From the opening scenes, the camera work establishes contrast between comfort and danger. The early shots inside the plane are steady and controlled. The lighting is soft and balanced, creating a sense of routine and safety. The framing is tight but calm, showing characters in structured spaces. When the storm begins, the camera movement becomes more unstable. Slight shakes and quick angle changes create tension without feeling exaggerated. This shift visually prepares the audience for the chaos of the crash. After the plane goes down, the cinematography changes dramatically. Wide aerial shots show the vast ocean surrounding the small island. These images emphasize how alone Claire and Logan truly are. The characters appear tiny against endless water and sky. This use of scale reinforces the feeling of helplessness. Nature looks beautiful but indifferent. The island is filmed in natural light, with strong sunlight during the day and deep shadows at night. This realistic lighting style avoids artificial brightness, making every scene feel authentic. The camera often stays close to the actors' faces. Close-up shots capture sweat, dirt, and emotional strain. The audience can see every expression clearly. This intimacy makes the psychological struggle more powerful. When Claire begins to break down after the failed rescue attempt, the camera lingers on her face without cutting away quickly. The stillness of the frame forces viewers to sit with her disappointment. Color plays an important role in the visual storytelling. In the early survival days, the colors are vibrant. The ocean is bright blue, and the jungle is rich green. This creates a sense of hope and possibility. As the story progresses and resources become scarce, the color tone becomes slightly muted. Storm clouds bring gray skies. Night scenes rely heavily on natural firelight, casting warm but unstable glows. These subtle changes reflect the emotional shifts within the characters. The use of natural elements is especially strong. The cinematography highlights wind moving through trees, waves crashing against rocks, and rain falling heavily on the shelter. These environmental details are not just background decoration. They become part of the storytelling. The camera often pauses on empty landscapes before returning to the characters, reminding the audience that the island itself is a silent force shaping events. During the storm sequence that destroys the shelter, the cinematography balances chaos with clarity. The camera moves quickly but never becomes confusing. Viewers can follow each action clearly. Lightning flashes briefly illuminate the screen, creating dramatic silhouettes. The mix of darkness and sudden brightness increases tension. Even in these intense moments, the visual style remains focused on character perspective rather than spectacle. One of the most powerful visual choices appears in the final act during the radio repair scene. The camera stays steady and close as Logan works carefully with damaged parts. The shallow focus keeps the background blurred, symbolizing how their entire world has narrowed to this single fragile device. When the distress signal finally transmits, the camera slowly pulls back, showing both characters in the frame together. This wider shot represents unity and shared hope. The rescue helicopter scene also avoids excessive drama. The camera captures the helicopter from a distance first, making the audience question whether it is real. As it approaches, the sunlight breaks through clouds, subtly brightening the image. The visual tone shifts from muted survival colors to warmer, hopeful light. Overall, the cinematography of Send Help supports the emotional journey with thoughtful framing, natural lighting, and meaningful color shifts. The visual style enhances realism while quietly reflecting character growth, making the survival experience feel both intimate and epic at the same time. The editing of Send Help plays a critical role in maintaining tension, emotional realism, and narrative clarity throughout the film. Because the story centers on only two main characters in a limited location, the pacing must feel natural and purposeful. The editors avoid flashy transitions or rapid, distracting cuts. Instead, they use rhythm and timing to mirror the psychological and physical journey of survival. In the opening act, the pacing is steady and controlled. Scenes on the plane are allowed to breathe, with clean cuts that establish normal life before disaster strikes. Conversations are edited in a traditional shot-reverse shot style, keeping the tone grounded. This calm pacing builds contrast, so when the storm hits, the shift feels dramatic. During the crash sequence, the editing becomes faster but not chaotic. Cuts are sharp and urgent, reflecting confusion without losing spatial awareness. The audience understands what is happening at every moment. After the crash, the pacing slows noticeably. This is an intentional choice. Survival stories require the audience to feel time passing. The editors use longer takes to emphasize exhaustion and isolation. For example, when Claire first wakes up on the beach, the camera stays on her as she slowly processes what has happened. There is no rush to the next moment. The silence and stillness create emotional weight. As Claire and Logan begin searching the wreckage, the editing balances tension and clarity. Quick cuts are used when danger appears, such as unstable debris or sharp metal pieces. However, when they gather supplies or build shelter, the scenes are edited more slowly. This contrast keeps the story engaging without overwhelming the viewer. Each task feels important because it is given time to unfold. One of the strongest examples of editing control appears in the cargo ship sequence. The buildup is slow and hopeful. Shots of the ship are intercut with Claire preparing the signal fire. The rhythm increases gradually, not suddenly. When the rain begins to fall, the cuts become slightly faster, matching rising panic. But instead of ending the scene abruptly, the editors allow the camera to stay on Claire's devastated expression. The extended reaction shot gives emotional closure to the failed attempt. Midway through the film, pacing reflects emotional shifts. After hope fades, scenes feel heavier and slower. The editors allow quiet moments to stretch, showing characters sitting silently or staring at the horizon. These pauses reinforce isolation. However, the film avoids becoming dull by inserting brief moments of urgency, such as sudden weather changes or arguments. This balance keeps momentum alive. The storm sequence that destroys the shelter is another highlight. Editing during this scene increases intensity through tighter cuts and quick reaction shots. Despite the speed, spatial continuity remains clear. Viewers always understand where Claire and Logan are positioned. This clarity prevents confusion and allows tension to feel real instead of artificial. When Logan injures his leg, the pacing shifts again. Scenes become more deliberate, reflecting his limited movement. Claire's tasks are shown with slightly longer shots, emphasizing responsibility and effort. The rhythm mirrors her growing patience and determination. The editing subtly supports character development without needing dialogue to explain it. The radio repair sequence in the final act uses controlled pacing to build suspense. Each failed attempt is separated by brief pauses. Silence becomes part of the rhythm. The editors resist the temptation to rush the moment. When the signal finally transmits, the cut to a wider shot creates emotional release. The rescue helicopter arrival is edited with restraint. The editors avoid dramatic slow motion. Instead, they allow the scene to unfold naturally. Reaction shots of Claire and Logan are balanced with distant views of the helicopter. The pacing slows slightly to highlight relief. Overall, the editing of Send Help maintains consistent narrative flow. It mirrors emotional highs and lows while keeping tension steady. The pacing never feels rushed or stagnant. Through careful rhythm and controlled transitions, the film sustains engagement from beginning to end. Sound plays a powerful and often subtle role in Send Help. Because the film focuses on isolation and survival, audio becomes just as important as visuals in creating tension and emotional depth. The sound design, combined with the musical score, builds atmosphere without overwhelming the story. Instead of constant background music, the film carefully balances silence, environmental noise, and carefully placed themes to support the character's journey. From the opening scenes on the plane, the sound design establishes realism. The low hum of the engine, the faint movement of air through the cabin, and the distant chatter of passengers create a sense of normal life. These sounds are not exaggerated. They feel natural and grounded. When the storm begins, the sound gradually intensifies. Thunder rolls in the distance before striking loudly. Rain hits the plane's surface in sharp bursts. The engine strain becomes more noticeable. This gradual layering of sound increases anxiety even before the crash happens. During the crash sequence, sound design becomes chaotic but controlled. Metal creaks, alarms beep, and wind roars aggressively. However, the audio never becomes confusing. Each sound is distinct. The audience can feel the danger without losing clarity. When the plane hits the water and debris scatters, the sound suddenly cuts to a muffled underwater tone. This brief moment of quiet distortion captures shock and disorientation. It is an effective use of audio perspective. After the crash, silence becomes one of the film's most powerful tools. The absence of music allows natural island sounds to dominate. Waves crashing against rocks, wind moving through palm trees, and distant birds create a sense of emptiness. The island feels alive, but indifferent. These environmental sounds remind the audience that Claire and Logan are alone in a vast, uncaring world. Composer Bear McCreary's score is used sparingly but effectively. Instead of constant orchestral themes, he introduces minimal, emotional motifs. Soft strings appear during reflective moments. A subtle piano theme is associated with hope and connection. These musical cues are quiet and restrained. They never overpower dialogue or natural sound. This restraint supports the grounded tone of the film. One particularly strong example of sound design appears during the cargo ship sequence. As Claire builds the signal fire, the music begins to rise gently. The wind becomes louder, and distant thunder rumbles softly. When the rain suddenly pours down, the fire's crackling sound is replaced by heavy rainfall. The music fades quickly, leaving only the harsh sound of water extinguishing hope. The silence that follows feels heavy and painful. In moments of argument between Claire and Logan, the sound design avoids dramatic music. Instead, small details like uneven breathing and trembling voices become more noticeable. This choice makes emotional conflict feel real. Viewers focus on the words and the strain behind them. The storm that destroys their shelter uses layered sound to create intensity. Wind howls aggressively. Branches snap loudly. Rain strikes surfaces with force. Yet, amid the chaos, the film keeps dialogue audible. The sound team ensures that viewers understand every word spoken. This clarity maintains emotional connection even during action. When Logan repairs the radio in the final act, sound once again becomes minimal. Tiny mechanical clicks and static noise are amplified. The faint crackle of the radio feels almost dramatic on its own. There is very little music in this sequence. The tension comes from quiet concentration. When the signal finally transmits, a subtle musical swell supports the emotional breakthrough. The helicopter rescue scene uses sound carefully as well. At first, the helicopter blades are distant and barely audible. The characters question whether they are imagining it. As the sound grows louder, hope becomes real. The music enters softly, blending with the mechanical rhythm of the blades. Overall, the sound design and score of Send help enhance immersion and emotional truth. Silence, natural noise, and restrained music work together to create tension and authenticity. The audio experience supports the story without distracting from it, making survival feel immediate and deeply human. The production design of Send Help plays a crucial role in making the survival story feel believable and immersive. Because most of the film takes place on a remote island, the environment itself becomes one of the main characters. Every visual detail, from the wreckage of the plane to the smallest survival tool, is carefully crafted to reflect realism and emotional progression. The design choices never feel artificial. Instead, they support the grounded tone established by the director and cinematographer. The island location is one of the film's strongest visual elements. Shot primarily on a real tropical island, the setting offers natural beaches, rocky cliffs, dense jungle, and open ocean views. The production team chose a location that feels beautiful but harsh. The sand is not perfectly clean. The vegetation looks thick and difficult to navigate. The rocks appear sharp and dangerous. These details help communicate that survival will not be easy. The island feels isolated and untouched by modern life. The plane wreckage serves as the central set piece during the early part of the film. Production designers carefully built a damaged aircraft structure that looks realistic without appearing overly dramatic. Broken seats, torn metal, and scattered luggage create a chaotic but believable crash site. The wreckage is not only a reminder of the disaster but also a resource for survival. Characters return to it multiple times to collect supplies. As the story progresses, the wreckage becomes more stripped down, reflecting how resources are slowly used up. Shelter construction is another important part of the design. In the beginning, Claire and Logan build a simple structure using debris and palm branches. The shelter looks unstable and temporary, which matches their uncertain mindset. After the storm destroys it, the second shelter appears more carefully constructed. This subtle improvement visually represents character growth. Claire's increasing skill and patience are shown through the stronger structure. The production team ensures that these changes feel natural rather than dramatic. Props play a significant role in grounding the survival experience. Water containers, makeshift fishing tools, sharpened sticks, and salvaged first aid supplies all look practical and functional. Nothing feels too polished or cinematic. Even the characters' clothing reflects realistic wear and tear. As days pass, clothes become dirtier, torn, and faded by sun exposure. This gradual change adds authenticity. Lighting design also supports the production environment. Daytime scenes rely heavily on natural sunlight, which creates strong shadows and heat intensity. Night scenes are often lit by firelight or moonlight. The warm glow of flames contrasts with the cool darkness of the island, creating both safety and vulnerability at the same time. This careful lighting design enhances the emotional mood without drawing attention to itself. The interior of the crashed plane is used sparingly after the initial survival phase, but when shown, it feels claustrophobic and haunting. The narrow aisles and broken panels remind viewers of how quickly normal life disappeared. These scenes are tightly framed, reinforcing confinement. In contrast, wide outdoor shots emphasize exposure and openness. The production design balances these two spaces effectively. One of the most meaningful props is the damaged emergency radio discovered in the later part of the film. Its worn-out appearance and rusted parts reflect years of abandonment. The device looks fragile and unreliable, which increases tension during the repair scenes. When Logan works on it, every small screw and wire feels important. The realism of the prop helps make the climax believable. Overall, the production design of Send Help avoids exaggeration and focuses on authenticity. The island feels real, the wreckage feels functional, and every prop serves a narrative purpose. Sets evolve with the characters, visually reflecting growth and endurance. By combining natural locations with carefully crafted details, the film creates a convincing survival environment that fully supports the emotional journey. In a survival film like Send Help, visual effects must feel invisible. The goal is not to impress the audience with spectacle, but to convince them that everything on screen could truly happen. The film carefully blends practical effects with subtle digital enhancements to maintain realism. Instead of relying heavily on computer-generated imagery, the production focuses on grounded techniques that make the danger feel immediate and believable. The plane crash sequence is the most technically demanding part of the film. To create this moment, the filmmakers combined full-scale practical sets with digital extensions. A life-sized section of the aircraft cabin was built on a hydraulic rig. This allowed the set to physically tilt, shake, and drop during filming. Actors were strapped into real seats that moved violently, creating authentic body reactions. The shaking of overhead compartments, falling luggage, and flickering lights were all done practically. This physical movement gives the crash a realistic weight that digital animation alone often lacks. Digital effects were used carefully to enhance the storm outside the plane. Computer-generated rain, lightning, and clouds were layered into exterior shots to create a dangerous sky. However, these digital elements were blended with real water effects and wind machines inside the cabin set. The result is a seamless combination of real and digital techniques. Viewers do not feel like they are watching a computer simulation. Instead, the storm feels natural and threatening. When the plane crashes into the ocean, the production used large water tanks to film close-up sequences of debris and actors struggling in water. These practical water effects add authenticity to the scene. Digital effects were later used to expand the ocean environment, extending the horizon and adding distant waves. The underwater moment, where sound becomes muffled and visuals blur, also uses subtle digital distortion to replicate the disorientation of being submerged. Once the story shifts to the island, practical effects become even more important. The harsh sunlight, strong winds, and real terrain create natural visual texture. Instead of building the island entirely in a studio, the production team filmed on location to capture real sand movement, real foliage, and unpredictable weather patterns. This choice reduces the need for heavy digital backgrounds. Storm sequences on the island required a combination of techniques. Rain towers were installed to create heavy rainfall during night scenes. Wind machines were used to bend palm trees and scatter debris. These practical elements give actors something real to react to. Digital enhancements were later added to intensify lightning and extend storm clouds across the sky. Because the base layer was practical, the digital effects feel grounded rather than artificial. Makeup and physical effects also contribute to realism. As days pass on the island, Claire and Logan show visible signs of survival strain. Dirt, sunburn, bruises, and small cuts are applied gradually through practical makeup techniques. Their appearance changes slowly instead of dramatically, reinforcing the sense of time passing. When Logan injures his leg, the swelling and wound are created with prosthetic makeup rather than relying entirely on digital alteration. This makes the injury feel tangible and painful. The damaged emergency radio discovered later in the film is another example of practical design. The prop department built a fully detailed device with real wires and components. When Logan repairs it, he interacts with actual moving parts. Digital effects were used only to enhance small sparks and subtle electronic flickers. This careful balance keeps the scene believable. The helicopter rescue sequence combines both real aircraft footage and digital compositing. A real helicopter was filmed approaching from a distance, while digital tools were used to blend it naturally into wide island shots. The dust and sand movement caused by the helicopter blades were created using practical wind effects on set. This combination creates authenticity and scale. Overall, Send Help uses visual effects with restraint. Practical techniques form the foundation, while digital tools quietly enhance the environment. The result is a survival story that feels physically real. The effects serve the characters and emotions rather than distracting from them. The dialogue and screenplay of Send Help are built around simplicity, realism, and emotional honesty. Because the film focuses on only two main characters stranded on a remote island, every line of dialogue carries weight. There are no long speeches meant to sound poetic or dramatic. Instead, the writing feels natural, like real people speaking under stress. The screenplay understands that silence can be just as powerful as words, and it uses both carefully to shape the emotional journey. The script, written by Mark Swift and Damian Shannon, avoids overcomplication. Early dialogue on the plane is casual and restrained. Claire speaks in a confident and direct way, often focused on schedules and responsibilities. Logan responds politely but keeps his answers short. These early conversations establish personality differences without heavy exposition. The writers trust the audience to observe behavior rather than explaining everything directly. After the crash, dialogue becomes more urgent and fragmented. Short sentences replace longer exchanges. Questions are repeated. Confusion shapes early conversations as Claire struggles to understand their situation. Logan speaks in calm, practical terms, focusing on what needs to be done. This contrast in tone creates natural tension. The screenplay does not rely on shouting to create conflict. Instead, emotional friction builds through disagreement in decision-making. One of the strongest aspects of the screenplay is how it handles blame. Claire's early accusations toward Logan are written with emotional realism. She does not speak like a villain. She speaks like someone afraid and desperate for control. Her words are sharp but understandable. Logan's responses are measured and defensive without becoming aggressive. This balance prevents the conflict from feeling exaggerated. It feels like two stressed individuals reacting honestly to trauma. Silence plays a major role in the screenplay. There are extended scenes where characters do not speak at all. For example, after the failed cargo ship rescue attempt, Claire sits in silence before finally breaking down. The script allows space for emotion without forcing dialogue to fill every moment. These quiet pauses give the audience time to process disappointment and fear. As the story progresses, the dialogue shifts subtly. Claire's tone softens. She begins asking questions instead of giving instructions. Logan gradually opens up about his past mistake as a pilot. These conversations are written in a straightforward way. There are no dramatic confessions filled with exaggerated emotion. Instead, the honesty feels earned because it grows naturally from shared hardship. The radio repair sequence in the final act shows the screenplay at its most restrained. Logan speaks quietly while explaining what he is doing. Claire offers encouragement in short, simple phrases. The tension comes from uncertainty, not from dramatic monologues. The writers understand that in moments of intense focus, people often speak less. Another strength of the screenplay is thematic consistency. Dialogue often reflects ideas of responsibility, control, and trust. Early in the film, Claire talks about planning and preparation in her professional life. Later, she admits that not everything can be controlled. This subtle callback connects her emotional growth to earlier lines. The writing feels cohesive rather than random. The ending dialogue remains simple. When rescue finally arrives, there are no exaggerated celebrations. Claire and Logan exchange a quiet look and a few relieved words. Their expressions say more than their voices. The final scenes back home include short but meaningful conversations that show personal change without explaining it directly. Overall, the dialogue and screenplay of Send help succeed because they remain grounded and restrained. The writing trusts actors to deliver emotion through performance rather than dramatic wording. Silence, short exchanges, and realistic conflict create authenticity. The script supports character development while maintaining tension, making the survival story feel deeply human. Send Help firmly belongs to the survival thriller genre, but it also blends elements of psychological drama and character study. What makes the film stand out is how carefully it balances tension with emotional depth. It does not rely only on physical danger to keep the audience engaged. Instead, it combines environmental threats with internal conflict, creating a layered experience that feels both intense and personal. From the beginning, the film establishes itself as a grounded survival story. The plane crash acts as the central survival event, placing the characters in immediate danger. The island setting reinforces classic genre elements such as isolation, limited resources, and uncertainty of rescue. These are all familiar survival themes, but the execution feels fresh because the story remains focused on two fully developed individuals rather than a large group. This narrow focus strengthens emotional investment. The tone in the first act is calm and realistic. The early plane scenes feel almost ordinary. This normal tone creates contrast when disaster strikes. The sudden shift from routine to chaos is sharp but believable. After the crash, the tone becomes tense and uncertain. The film does not rush into action sequences. Instead, it adopts a slow burn approach. The pacing allows fear to grow gradually, which fits well within the thriller genre. As the second act begins, the tone shifts toward frustration and emotional conflict. Survival thrillers often focus only on physical struggle, but Send Help adds psychological pressure. Claire's impatience and Logan's guilt create tension beyond the environment. The genre expands into drama. Arguments feel just as intense as storms. This blending of genres prevents the film from becoming repetitive. The cargo ship scene marks a major tonal shift. For a brief moment, the film transitions from despair to hope. The music rises gently, and the camera frames Claire with optimism. This lighter tone builds anticipation. When the rain destroys the signal fire, the tone shifts sharply back to disappointment. The sudden loss of hope deepens emotional impact. The audience experiences the same rise and fall as the characters. This controlled shift strengthens the thriller aspect because uncertainty remains constant. Midway through the story, the tone becomes heavier and more reflective. Scenes slow down. Silence grows longer. The island feels less like an enemy and more like a testing ground. The survival genre blends further with character-driven drama. Claire's breakdown and Logan's confession scenes are quiet but powerful. Instead of loud action, tension comes from vulnerability. The storm that destroys their shelter introduces another tonal change. The film briefly returns to high-intensity survival mode. Fast pacing, strong wind, and visual chaos create urgency. However, even during this action-heavy sequence, emotional stakes remain central. The danger is not only about losing shelter, it is about losing stability and hope. In the final act, the tone shifts toward cautious determination. The discovery of the damaged radio introduces fragile optimism. The thriller tension builds slowly as Logan attempts repairs. The mood is not fully hopeful, but it is no longer hopeless. This balanced tone keeps viewers engaged without providing easy reassurance. The rescue scene brings the final tonal transformation. Instead of dramatic celebration, the film chooses quiet relief. The emotional tone remains grounded. Survival is treated as exhausting and humbling rather than heroic. This restrained ending aligns with the film's overall approach to the genre. Overall, Send Help executes the survival thriller genre with discipline and emotional intelligence. Tone shifts are carefully timed and never feel forced. The film moves smoothly between tension, despair, hope, and growth. By blending physical survival with psychological depth, it creates a genre experience that feels realistic, balanced, and emotionally satisfying. At its core, Send Help is more than just a survival thriller. Beneath the physical struggle against nature lies a deeper exploration of human vulnerability, responsibility, trust, and personal transformation. The film uses isolation not only as a setting but as a tool to strip away comfort and reveal truth. Through Claire and Logan's journey, several powerful themes emerge that give the story lasting emotional impact. One of the strongest themes in the film is the illusion of control. At the beginning, Claire believes she can manage every situation through planning and authority. Her professional life is built around organization and leadership. However, the plane crash destroys that illusion instantly. On the island, control no longer comes from status or intelligence alone. Survival depends on adaptability and cooperation. The film suggests that life cannot always be controlled, no matter how prepared someone believes they are. Accepting uncertainty becomes a key step toward growth. Another central theme is responsibility and guilt. Logan carries emotional weight from the crash, even though the storm was unavoidable. His sense of responsibility reflects a broader message about how people internalize failure. The film explores how guilt can either paralyze someone or motivate change. Logan initially pushes himself harder out of self-blame. Over time, he learns that responsibility does not mean endless punishment. Instead, it means learning and moving forward. This theme adds emotional complexity to what could have been a simple survival story. Trust is another major theme woven throughout the narrative. In the early days on the island, Claire and Logan struggle to trust one another. Fear creates suspicion. Blame creates distance. However, survival forces them to rely on each other. Trust is built slowly through shared effort rather than dramatic promises. The film shows that trust is not automatic. It grows through action, honesty, and vulnerability. Without trust, survival becomes nearly impossible. The theme of human resilience also stands at the center of the story. Both characters face moments where giving up seems easier than continuing. The failed cargo ship rescue is especially devastating. Yet, despite exhaustion and emotional breakdown, they choose to keep trying. The film suggests that resilience is not loud or heroic. It is quiet persistence. It is waking up each day and continuing despite fear. This grounded portrayal of strength makes the message more relatable. Connection and emotional openness form another important theme. Claire begins the story emotionally distant from her family. She values independence and professional success more than vulnerability. The island experience changes her perspective. Survival teaches her that connection is not weakness. Admitting fear does not reduce strength. By the end of the film, she understands the importance of reaching out and repairing relationships. The survival journey becomes symbolic of emotional reconnection. The theme of balance between nature and humanity is also present. The island is neither portrayed as evil nor kind. It simply exists. Nature does not attack intentionally, but it does not protect either. This neutrality reinforces the idea that survival depends on respect and adaptation rather than domination. The film avoids portraying humans as conquerors. Instead, it shows them as small parts of a larger world. Hope is the final and perhaps most powerful theme. The phrase, "send help," represents more than a distress call. It symbolizes belief in rescue even when circumstances appear hopeless. Hope rises and falls throughout the film, but it never fully disappears. The story suggests that hope is fragile but essential. Without it, effort fades. With it, even small chances become worth pursuing. Overall, Send Help delivers themes that extend beyond physical survival. It explores control, responsibility, trust, resilience, connection, and hope. These core messages give the film emotional depth and transform it from a simple thriller into a meaningful human story. Beyond its surface as a survival thriller, Send Help contains layers of symbolism that deepen its emotional and psychological impact. Many of the film's objects, settings, and situations carry meaning beyond their practical purpose. These symbolic elements quietly reinforce the story's themes of control, guilt, growth, and hope. The film does not present these meanings in an obvious way. Instead, it allows viewers to discover them through careful observation. The island itself is the most important symbol in the film. On a literal level, it represents isolation and danger. But on a deeper level, it acts as a space of forced reflection. Removed from society, technology, and social roles, Claire and Logan must face who they truly are. The island becomes a symbol of emotional exposure. There are no distractions, no schedules, and no outside validation. Everything unnecessary is stripped away. What remains is honesty. The crashed plane carries symbolic weight as well. At the beginning of the film, the plane represents control and modern safety. It is a machine designed to conquer distance and connect people. When it crashes, it symbolizes the collapse of certainty. For Claire, the wreckage represents the breakdown of her structured life. For Logan, it becomes a physical reminder of guilt and responsibility. Each time they return to the wreckage for supplies, it feels like confronting the past. Fire serves as another powerful symbol. In survival terms, fire means warmth, protection, and signaling for rescue. Symbolically, it represents hope. When Claire builds the signal fire for the passing cargo ship, it is more than an attempt at rescue. It is an act of belief. When the rain extinguishes the flames, the image reflects emotional devastation. Hope, like fire, requires protection and persistence. Later, when they continue building fires despite setbacks, it symbolizes resilience. Water also carries layered meaning throughout the film. The ocean is vast and beautiful, yet it isolates them completely. It represents both life and separation. Water provides fish and rain for survival, but it also surrounds them like a barrier. The crash into water symbolizes a violent entry into uncertainty. Later scenes of calm waves suggest acceptance. The changing behavior of water mirrors emotional states. The emergency radio discovered in the final act functions as a symbol of communication and vulnerability. It is damaged and unreliable, much like the emotional walls both characters carry. Repairing the radio becomes symbolic of repairing trust and connection. When the signal finally transmits, it is not only a call for physical rescue but also a sign of emotional breakthrough. They are no longer isolated internally. Clothing and physical appearance subtly symbolize transformation. In the beginning, Claire's clothes are neat and professional. As time passes, her clothing becomes worn and practical. This change represents the shedding of her corporate identity. She becomes less defined by status and more defined by action. Logan's physical injury symbolizes vulnerability. His inability to move freely forces him to accept help, reflecting his emotional journey toward humility. Even the weather carries symbolic meaning. Storms represent emotional chaos and inner conflict. Clear skies symbolize moments of clarity and temporary peace. The storm that destroys their shelter mirrors the breaking point in their relationship. Afterward, the calmer weather reflects emotional rebuilding. Finally, the phrase, "send help," is symbolic beyond its literal meaning. It represents the courage to admit need. At the beginning of the story, both characters struggle with pride and control. By the end, sending a signal for help becomes an act of strength rather than weakness. The message symbolizes trust in others and acceptance of vulnerability. Through these symbols, Send Help tells a deeper story about transformation. Objects and natural elements quietly reflect emotional change. The film's hidden meanings enhance its impact, rewarding viewers who look beyond the surface survival narrative. While Send Help is primarily a survival thriller, it also offers subtle social and cultural commentary beneath its intense narrative. The film does not present direct political arguments or obvious messages. Instead, it explores modern life, human dependence on technology, gender expectations, and emotional isolation in a quiet but meaningful way. These themes are woven naturally into the story rather than delivered through speeches or dramatic statements. One of the clearest social commentaries in the film relates to modern dependence on technology. At the beginning of the story, Claire is constantly connected to her phone and professional responsibilities. Her life revolves around communication, scheduling, and digital organization. The plane crash instantly removes all of that. On the island, technology becomes almost non-existent. Without phone signals, internet access, or immediate rescue systems, Claire and Logan must rely on physical skill and personal interaction. The film subtly questions how prepared modern society truly is when stripped of convenience. It suggests that comfort can create vulnerability. The movie also comments on emotional isolation in contemporary culture. Claire appears successful and socially active, yet she is emotionally distant from her family. Her strained relationship with her sister reflects a broader theme about prioritizing work over connection. The island forces her to reconsider these choices. By removing distractions, the film highlights how easily people can neglect personal relationships in pursuit of achievement. The survival experience becomes symbolic of rediscovering emotional priorities. Gender expectations are another subtle layer within the film. At first, Claire seems unprepared for physical survival tasks, while Logan appears more capable due to his practical training. This setup could have reinforced traditional stereotypes. However, the film gradually shifts this dynamic. When Logan becomes injured, Claire steps into a leadership role. She learns survival skills quickly and adapts to physical challenges. Her growth challenges the assumption that strength is limited by gender. The story presents resilience as a human quality rather than a male or female trait. The film also touches on the idea of professional identity versus personal identity. Claire defines herself by her career at the start. Her confidence comes from her success and authority in business settings. When those external markers disappear, she must confront who she is without status. This reflects a broader cultural issue where many people tie self-worth to professional achievement. The island strips away titles and positions, leaving only character and choice. Logan's storyline includes commentary on responsibility and accountability. As a pilot, he represents trust in professional systems. When the crash happens, even though it was caused by natural forces, he feels personal responsibility. This reflects society's tendency to place blame quickly, even in complex situations. The film suggests that responsibility should involve reflection and growth rather than endless guilt. Environmental themes also appear subtly. The island is not portrayed as a villain. Nature is shown as neutral and powerful. This portrayal encourages respect rather than domination. The characters must adapt to the environment instead of attempting to control it. In this way, the film quietly comments on humanity's relationship with nature. Survival depends on understanding and cooperation rather than force. Finally, the act of sending a distress signal represents vulnerability in a broader cultural sense. Many people struggle to ask for help due to pride or fear of appearing weak. The film suggests that seeking help is not failure. It is strength. This message resonates socially, especially in a world where independence is often celebrated over connection. Overall, Send Help offers thoughtful social and cultural commentary without becoming preachy. Through character development and survival challenges, it reflects modern dependence on technology, emotional disconnection, shifting gender roles, and the importance of vulnerability. These underlying messages add depth and relevance to the film's gripping narrative. Send Help is filled with emotionally powerful and visually striking moments, but a few scenes stand out as especially impactful. These scenes define the film's tension, character development, and emotional payoff. They stay with the audience long after the credits roll because they combine strong performances, meaningful storytelling, and carefully controlled direction. The first truly unforgettable scene is the plane crash. While survival films often rely on large-scale spectacle, this crash sequence feels personal and immediate. The camera focuses on Claire and Logan's reactions rather than wide destruction shots. The shaking cabin, flashing warning lights, and rising panic create a sense of helplessness. When the plane finally hits the water and the sound briefly becomes muffled, The moment feels disorienting and terrifying. This scene sets the tone for the entire film. It marks the end of safety and the beginning of uncertainty. Another powerful scene occurs when Claire first realizes that they are completely alone. After exploring the wreckage and scanning the horizon, she slowly understands that no immediate rescue is coming. The camera lingers on her face as fear turns into disbelief. There is no dramatic music. Only the sound of waves and wind fills the silence. This quiet moment is impactful because it shows the emotional weight of isolation. It is not loud or explosive, but it deeply affects the audience. The cargo ship sequence is perhaps the most emotionally devastating moment in the film. When Claire spots the distant ship, hope instantly rises. She works desperately to build a signal fire while Logan supports her efforts. The pacing of the scene increases tension as dark clouds begin to gather. Just as the fire grows strong enough to be seen, heavy rain pours down and extinguishes it. The camera remains steady on Claire as she watches the ship disappear. Her silent breakdown, filled with exhaustion and heartbreak, makes this scene unforgettable. It represents the crushing loss of hope. The storm that destroys their shelter is another major highlight. This scene combines physical danger with emotional stakes. Wind and rain tear through their fragile home while Claire and Logan struggle to protect what little they have built. The chaos feels intense, but the focus remains on their effort to survive together. When Logan injures his leg during the storm, the scene shifts from action to vulnerability. It marks a turning point in their relationship and adds new tension to their survival. One of the most meaningful scenes happens quietly during a conversation about regret. Logan admits his past mistake as a pilot, revealing the guilt he has been carrying. Claire listens instead of arguing. The honesty in this moment deepens their bond. The scene stands out because it is emotionally raw without dramatic exaggeration. It shows how survival is not only about physical endurance but also about confronting inner fears. The radio repair sequence in the final act is filled with suspense. Logan works carefully with damaged wires while Claire watches anxiously. Each failed attempt increases tension. The room is silent except for small mechanical clicks. When the radio finally transmits a weak signal, the relief feels overwhelming. It is not a loud celebration, but a quiet breakthrough that carries emotional power. Finally, the helicopter rescue scene provides a satisfying conclusion. At first, the sound of helicopter blades is faint and uncertain. Claire and Logan hesitate, unsure if it is real. As the helicopter approaches, hope becomes visible. The camera captures their exhausted faces as relief slowly replaces doubt. This final moment is impactful because it feels earned. Together, these memorable scenes define the emotional journey of Send Help. Each one contributes to the film's tension, growth, and ultimate message of resilience and hope. Send Help naturally invites comparison to other survival films that focus on isolation, endurance, and personal transformation. While it tells its own unique story, it shares thematic and structural similarities with several well-known movies. At the same time, it reflects certain directing choices that connect it to Sam Raimi's broader filmmaking style, even though it is more restrained than many of his previous works. One of the most obvious comparisons is to Cast Away. Both films center on characters stranded in isolated environments with limited resources. In Cast Away, the story focuses on a single individual learning to survive alone. Send Help, however, introduces two characters whose emotional dynamic becomes central to the narrative. While both films explore resilience and self-discovery, Send Help places greater emphasis on partnership and trust. The presence of two survivors allows for conflict, shared growth, and emotional dialogue that differ from the solitary journey seen in Cast Away. Another comparison can be made with The Shallows. That film also features a single character trapped in a dangerous natural setting. Both movies create tension through isolation and the unpredictability of nature. However, The Shallows leans more heavily into physical threat and suspense-driven action. Send Help takes a slower, more character-driven approach. The danger comes not only from the environment but also from emotional strain and internal conflict. This difference in tone makes Send Help feel more grounded and reflective. The film can also be compared to Gravity, which similarly portrays survival in an extreme and isolated setting. In Gravity, the emptiness of space reflects emotional loss and personal struggle. Send Help uses the island in a comparable symbolic way. Both films focus on limited characters and rely heavily on performance to carry the story. However, Gravity is more visually grand and effects-driven, while Send Help intentionally keeps its scale intimate. When looking at Sam Raimi's earlier work, the contrast is interesting. Raimi is often known for energetic camera movement, horror elements, and stylized visuals, particularly in films like the Evil Dead series. Those films are bold, fast-paced, and filled with heightened intensity. In Send Help, Raimi adopts a more restrained and mature style. The camera work is calmer. The pacing is deliberate. Instead of horror-driven shocks, the tension comes from emotional realism. This shift demonstrates Raimi's versatility as a director. At the same time, subtle elements of his signature style can still be noticed. Raimi has always been skilled at building tension through perspective and environment. In Send Help, he uses the island setting much like he used haunted locations in earlier films. The environment becomes an active presence. Additionally, his careful attention to character reactions during high-stress moments reflects his experience directing intense emotional scenes. The film also shares similarities with other modern survival dramas that focus on human connection rather than spectacle. Movies like Adrift explore the bond between two individuals facing disaster at sea. In both films, survival becomes intertwined with emotional reconciliation. However, Send Help avoids heavy romantic focus and instead centers on mutual respect and partnership. This makes its emotional arc feel less predictable. Ultimately, Send Help stands comfortably within the survival genre while carving its own identity. It combines the isolation themes of Castaway, the tension of The Shallows, and the emotional symbolism of Gravity, yet remains distinct through its character-driven approach. Compared to Raimi's earlier work, it shows a quieter and more disciplined side of his directing style. By blending familiar survival elements with grounded emotional storytelling, Send Help honors the genre while offering something personal and thoughtfully executed. The ending of Send Help is simple on the surface, but emotionally layered beneath it. After weeks of survival, emotional breakdown, and slow personal transformation, Claire and Logan finally manage to repair the damaged emergency radio. The signal is weak, and for a moment, it feels uncertain whether anyone even hears it. Days pass with no response. Hope once again begins to fade. Then, in the distance, the faint sound of helicopter blades cuts through the silence. Rescue has arrived. On a literal level, the ending delivers what the audience has been waiting for. The two survivors are saved. They are lifted off the island and returned to civilization. But the power of the ending lies not in the rescue itself, but in what it represents. The helicopter is not just transportation. It symbolizes earned hope, humility, and emotional rebirth. When Claire and Logan first hear the helicopter, they hesitate. The sound feels unreal, almost imagined. This hesitation is important. After experiencing repeated disappointment, especially during the failed cargo ship rescue attempt, they no longer trust hope easily. The film takes its time before visually confirming the helicopter's presence. This delay builds emotional tension. When the aircraft finally becomes visible, relief washes over both characters and the audience. The moment of rescue is not overly dramatic. There is no loud cheering or exaggerated celebration. Instead, the camera focuses on their faces. They look exhausted, sunburned, and emotionally drained. Their relief feels quiet and genuine. This restrained approach keeps the ending grounded. Survival has changed them, and the film respects that transformation. The final scenes back home provide emotional closure. Claire returns to her life, but she is clearly different. She reconnects with her sister, showing vulnerability instead of control. This reunion represents her internal growth. At the beginning of the film, Claire prioritized work and authority over emotional connection. The island experience forced her to recognize the value of relationships. Her transformation feels complete because it is reflected in her actions rather than explained through dialogue. Logan's ending is equally meaningful. He returns to flying, but his demeanor has changed. He carries himself with renewed confidence, not arrogance. The guilt he once felt about the crash no longer controls him. By facing survival directly and repairing the emergency radio, he symbolically repaired his own sense of responsibility. His return to the cockpit represents acceptance and forward movement. On a deeper level, the ending reinforces the film's central themes. The message, "Send help," represents more than a distress call. It symbolizes the courage to admit vulnerability. Both Claire and Logan began the story struggling with pride and emotional distance. By the end, they understand that asking for help is not weakness. It is strength. The island itself becomes symbolic in the final interpretation. It was never simply a place of danger. It was a space for transformation. It stripped away social roles and forced honesty. The rescue does not erase what happened. Instead, it completes the lesson. Survival was not only about staying alive. It was about learning who they truly are. The film avoids a romantic conclusion between Claire and Logan, which adds realism. Their bond is built on shared experience and trust, not sudden romance. This choice keeps the focus on personal growth rather than predictable storytelling. In the end, Send Help concludes with hope grounded in humility. The rescue is satisfying because it feels earned through endurance, cooperation, and emotional honesty. The final interpretation suggests that survival changes people permanently. It teaches acceptance, resilience, and the value of connection. Send Help was produced as a mid-budget survival thriller with an estimated production budget of around $45 million. This level of investment reflects the film's balance between practical location shooting, controlled visual effects, and a focused cast. Unlike massive action blockbusters that require hundreds of millions of dollars, Send Help was designed to keep its scale intimate. The story centers on two main characters and one primary location, which helped keep costs under control while still allowing for high production quality. A significant portion of the budget went toward location filming in the South Pacific. Shooting on a real island increased authenticity but also required careful logistical planning. Transporting crew, equipment, and safety teams added to expenses. However, the decision to film in natural environments reduced the need for fully digital backdrops, which helped balance the overall cost. The plane crash sequence also required a specially built set and water tank filming, contributing to the budget but providing strong visual realism. Marketing costs were handled separately from the production budget. The promotional campaign focused on tension, mystery, and emotional survival rather than revealing major plot details. Trailers highlighted the plane crash, the isolation of the island, and the powerful phrase, "Send Help." Posters used minimal imagery, often showing the vast ocean with small figures in the distance. This marketing strategy aimed to attract fans of survival dramas and psychological thrillers. When Send Help was released in 2026, it opened in theaters worldwide. The film had a strong opening weekend, earning approximately $28 million domestically. Word of mouth played a key role in sustaining its box office performance. Audiences responded positively to the emotional depth and grounded storytelling. Over the following weeks, the film continued to perform steadily rather than experiencing a sharp drop. By the end of its theatrical run, Send Help earned around $145 million globally. This total placed it comfortably above its production budget, making it a financial success. While it did not reach blockbuster levels, it performed strongly for a character-driven survival film. The international market contributed significantly, especially in regions where survival dramas have strong appeal. Critical reception was generally positive. Many critics praised the performances of Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien, highlighting their emotional chemistry and believable transformation. Reviewers often mention the film's restrained direction and realistic tone as strengths. The decision to focus on character development rather than spectacle was seen as refreshing within the thriller genre. Some critics noted that the film's pacing might feel slow to viewers expecting constant action. However, others defended this deliberate rhythm, arguing that it allowed tension to build naturally. The screenplay received praise for its realistic dialogue and avoidance of exaggerated drama. The sound design and cinematography were also frequently mentioned as standout elements that enhanced immersion. Audience reception mirrored critical feedback. Viewers who appreciated emotionally grounded survival stories rated the film highly. Online discussions often focused on the cargo ship scene and the radio repair sequence as particularly memorable moments. The ending received positive reactions for avoiding unnecessary melodrama. In award conversations, Send Help was recognized in technical categories such as sound design and cinematography. While it did not dominate major award ceremonies, it gained respect within industry circles for its disciplined execution and performance strength. Overall, Send Help achieved solid financial success and favorable reception. Its moderate budget, strong word of mouth, and emotional storytelling contributed to steady box office results. The film proved that survival thrillers do not need massive scale to succeed. With careful direction and compelling performances, a focused story can resonate strongly with both critics and audiences alike. Send Help may appear at first to be a one-time survival experience, but it actually holds strong rewatch value because of its emotional depth, layered symbolism, and character-driven storytelling. While the suspense of the plane crash and rescue might feel most intense during the first viewing, the film offers deeper rewards when watched again. On a second viewing, audiences are more likely to notice subtle character shifts, symbolic details, and carefully planted dialogue that reflect long-term growth. One reason the film holds up on repeat viewing is the transformation of Claire and Logan. During the first watch, viewers are focused on whether they will survive. On later viewings, attention shifts toward how they change. Small details in their early conversations take on new meaning. Claire's confident tone at the beginning feels more fragile once the audience understands her emotional struggles. Logan's calm behavior carries deeper weight once viewers recognize the guilt he is carrying internally. The film's pacing also benefits from rewatching. What might feel slow to some viewers initially becomes more purposeful with context. Quiet scenes, such as Claire staring at the ocean or Logan silently working on shelter repairs, reveal emotional subtext that is easy to overlook during the tension of a first watch. These quieter moments gain value when viewers are no longer waiting for immediate action. Symbolism enhances rewatch value as well. The island, the plane wreckage, the fire, and the emergency radio all carry layered meaning. On repeat viewing, audiences can track how these symbols evolve. For example, the fire begins as a basic survival tool but later becomes a representation of hope. Watching the cargo ship scene again may feel even more emotional because viewers understand how much that lost opportunity affects both characters' growth. The performances also reward a second viewing. Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien deliver subtle acting choices that become more noticeable over time. Small facial expressions, hesitations in speech, and shifts in posture reveal emotional complexity. These details are easier to appreciate when viewers are no longer focused only on plot progression. Beyond rewatch value, the film leaves audiences with meaningful takeaways. One of the strongest messages is the importance of adaptability. Claire's journey shows that identity should not be limited to career or control. When stripped of status and routine, she discovers resilience she did not know she had. This takeaway resonates in everyday life, where unexpected challenges can force personal growth. Another key message is the strength found in vulnerability. Both characters struggle with pride and emotional distance at the start. Survival requires them to admit fear, ask for help, and trust each other. The phrase, "send help," becomes symbolic of courage rather than weakness. This message feels especially relevant in modern culture, where independence is often valued more than connection. The film also encourages reflection on balance between professional ambition and personal relationships. Claire's strained bond with her sister highlights the cost of emotional neglect. By the end of the film, reconnection becomes part of her healing. Viewers may leave the film considering their own priorities and relationships. Ultimately, Send Help offers more than tension and survival thrills. It provides an emotional experience that invites reflection. Its grounded storytelling, layered symbolism, and strong performances make it a film worth revisiting. Each viewing reveals new emotional details and reinforces its core message about resilience, trust, and the power of asking for help. If you are interested in watching Send Help, there are several ways you can experience the film, depending on your preference for format and viewing environment. Because the movie was released theatrically in 2026, it first became available in cinemas worldwide. Watching it in theaters offered the most immersive experience, especially because of its strong sound design, natural cinematography, and quiet emotional tension. The large screen helped emphasize the scale of the ocean and the isolation of the island, while the theater sound system enhanced the subtle environmental audio that plays such an important role in the film. After its theatrical run, Send Help moved into digital distribution. It became available for digital rental and purchase on major video-on-demand platforms. This option allows viewers to stream the movie at home using smart televisions, laptops, tablets, or smartphones. Renting the film is usually a cost-effective choice if you plan to watch it once, while purchasing gives permanent access in your digital library. Digital versions are typically offered in high definition and in some cases ultra-high definition, which helps preserve the visual quality of the island landscapes and detailed close-up performances. Physical media is another option for viewers who prefer collecting films. The movie was released on Blu-ray and DVD formats after its digital release window. The Blu-ray edition offers the highest picture and sound quality for home viewing. It also often includes bonus features such as behind-the-scenes footage, cast interviews, commentary tracks, and production design discussions. These extras can add significant value for fans who want deeper insight into how the film was made. DVD editions provide a more affordable alternative, though with slightly lower video resolution compared to Blu-ray. For those who subscribe to streaming services, Send Help eventually became available on a major subscription-based platform following its premium rental period. The timing of this availability can vary by region, depending on licensing agreements. Streaming offers convenience and accessibility, allowing viewers to watch the film instantly without additional rental fees if it is included in their subscription plan. When deciding how to watch Send Help, consider the type of experience you want. If you value strong audio detail, using a soundbar or quality headphones at home can significantly enhance the viewing experience. Because the film relies heavily on environmental sounds such as wind, waves, and subtle music cues, clear audio makes a difference. Watching in a quiet environment is also recommended, as the film uses silence intentionally to build tension. For viewers who enjoy analyzing character development and symbolism, watching the film more than once can be rewarding. Streaming or digital purchase options make it easier to pause, rewind, and revisit key scenes such as the cargo ship moment or the radio repair sequence. If you prefer watching with others, Send Help works well as a group viewing experience, especially for audiences who enjoy discussing themes of resilience and emotional growth afterward. However, it is also powerful as a solo watch, since the intimate storytelling allows for personal reflection. Overall, Send Help is widely accessible through theaters during its release period, digital rental and purchase platforms, physical media formats, and eventually streaming subscriptions. Choosing the right format depends on whether you prioritize immersion, convenience, or collectible value. No matter how you watch it, the film's grounded performances and emotional depth remain at the center of the experience. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping movie explanations like this.